Please welcome our speaker today, Mr. Gordon Jenkins.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Fred Bell, also the managing director. Fred, are you here? I think you got invited to the Patent Museum. He's out in the desk. Greg and your staff, thanks awful much, and especially the restoration crew, the guys that put this thing together. It looks better now than it did in 1961. If you see on the tail, in the black letters, AF-61 left of the 105. So the airplane is now 44 years old. I want to start. Well, let me just explain. I'm going to talk a lot about the guys, the places we live, the places we work, the teamwork that occurred, the missions, some of the targets, how we got in and out of the targets, and some of the real special people. Let's see. Did I turn this on? Greg, I'm not advancing.
Gordy, I think you flew this thing. You're clearly more advanced than I am.
It's not doing the forwarding.
Oh, let's see.
This is the right button. The right arrow. Or if you have a different one, you can use it.
You didn't do a very good pre-flight.
You know what? At Tockley and Karat, we trusted our crew chief so much, he just walked around and leaned on the bombs. We didn't worry about it. And I'm going to talk about my favorite crew chief. Hold on. I'd like to dedicate the talk to these two gentlemen. They both happened to be at Tockley flying when I was there, and I was on the rescue mission when Leo got shot down. You can see that the presentation to Merle Bethelson was made by President Johnson. Immediately when he was one of the very few weasel pilots that got to finish 100 missions. And Leo on the right had to wait 6.5 years after spending a little time in a hotel in Hanoi. And President Nixon presented him his award. Great man. Please look him up in Google and understand the details of the missions that they flew to earn. We never say win the Medal of Honor, it's earn. Okay. Here's a B-17. There's one in the hangar across the way there, and we all need to respect that airplane greatly. It dropped more tonnage of bombs in World War II than any other airplane. Now, the 105, and it's very rugged too, as you can see from these photos, the 105 has two things in common with the B-17. The 105 dropped more bombs in North Vietnam than any other aircraft, and it is also very rugged, and you'll see some slides later on to show that. But of the 12,000 B-17s built, 4,000 were shot down. That's a 37% loss rate. And when they lost an airplane, they lost 10 people. The good news about the Thud, we lost one on some of the G model. The Weasels might have lost two, but we didn't have as many folks going on the ground. Of the 519 105Ds available in 64, 393 were shot down over a 6-year period. That's a 70% loss rate of the airplanes that we had. We actually ran out of airplanes, and so we had to switch to F-4s because we didn't have enough left to man two wings, which was the rational break-even point in staffing. I'll give you one eye chart in the whole show. The airplane was designed in the height of the Cold War, and the main purpose of the aircraft was to be able to deliver a nuclear weapon. That's why it sits so high off the ground. If you remember the Enola Gay pictures, they towed it over a hole in the ground where the nuke was, and they had to go through a kabuki dance to load the nuke. The 105, they wanted it purposely designed so you could load it on the ground. So there was room there for that, and the whole airplane was designed around the nukes of the day. 61 B models were lost to fire and explosion of those 500 and so built by 1964. That's how it got the name Thud. It hit the ground a lot. 1 out of 10 airplanes that had been built exploded. And I'll jump ahead one slide and show you these are the two fixes, engineering fixes. the dog ears here on the side to increase airflow in the aft section, and they added about an extra 8 inches on this fuel vent because the shorter fuel vent was having fuel sucked back up near the exhaust. And between these two actions, engineering actions, they were able to solve that problem. Thud was a bad name for the airplane through 64, and after that it was just a nice nickname. In October 64, the 105 dropped a record-setting one airplane, dropped 6 tons of bombs during a firepower demonstration at Fort Bragg, witnessed by President Kennedy. We are the only aircraft, to my knowledge, that has both refueling capabilities. The probe, which you can see sticking out here, probe and drogue, and then we had a little drawer up on top we could open, which was the receptacle for the other option. Gatling gun, which is built in, and the 104 had the same gun, shook the whole airframe when you fired it. As Vietnam began, we moved the airplanes from Germany, where they had been assigned so they could attack Russia, and we moved them into the Southeast Asian area. While individual pilots looked at a 50% loss rate, chance of finishing 100 missions, the airplanes were going down at a total of 70%. I'm going to read this. This is an interesting quote. The Thud's low altitude dash capability was witnessed to show you that the thing is just fast. The small wing for the size of the airplane, big powerful motor, and it rocked. Dick Jonas, who's well known among some of the fighter pilots for his songs, he's a guitarist and he has a lot of good fighter pilot songs. He was a back when they were egressing from the target near Hanoi. He said, our flight was beating feet eastbound with a speedometer reading something in excess of 9 miles a minute when I look back over my left shoulder and I see a lizard-colored machine creeping up from 7 o'clock. I yell over the UHF, bogey, left 7 o'clock and closing. 5 seconds later, I keyed the mic again. Disregard, it's a Thud. This lonely bastard is all by himself, smoking along with the throttle locked high and tight in the far northwest corner of the cockpit. They say the Thud will do 800 miles on the deck. This guy drives right past us, leaves us behind in the North Vietnamese small. And that was from an F-4 pilot. I was one of 8 first lieutenants who were signed to check out in the F-105 at Nellis, then go directly into combat. My story is mirrored quite a bit by Gary. Gary Olin, will you stand up, please? Gary Olin has also shared with me this hat. We went over as kids. The older guys, it was mostly the older guys' airplane. There were more lieutenant colonels and colonels flying the F-105s out of these 2 bases, I'll show you in a moment, than lieutenants. But the older guys thought it was going to be a tough airplane to fly. So 3 of these kids were Air Force Academy graduates who had attended graduate school before going up to Nellis. And the top left guy, Jim Shively, was my roommate at Top League. This photo was taken in November '66 in front of a 2-seater, the F model. There were no D models. Oh, I jumped. Yeah. This is an F model, and Shively is here, and Skinny Me was there. And so anyway, this was taken in November of '66. When we got to Top League, they took us to base operations. And on the wall at base operations were some typical military 4x8 sheets of plywood with little sticky things on it. One was labeled 100 Missions North Vietnam, one was labeled KIA, MIA, and POWs. And we're standing around waiting for the squadrons to come take us, and there's the same number of little name tags on both. We looked around and said, you know, this is a 50-50 deal. And nobody told us this before we left the States. That's pretty well thought forward. Now I'll jump to Jim Shively. He was my roommate when he got shot down, and he spent 6 years in Hanoi. Probably the hardest thing he ever had to do was write a letter to his mother. This is our goal, the patch and the coin. Greg, do you have that coin? Can you start it floating around? Let's see. Yeah, Greg's going to start this coin floating around, and you can see it. And the only people really that have them are 105, 100 mission guys. So please, after you've seen it, please return it. It'll pass around. show you the route packs. You may have heard of route packs. We had 6 route packs we flew over North Vietnam. Military has to divide things into parts and pieces and numbers. Pack 6, the northernmost and the westbound. The Pack 6 was divided into 2. 6A, which is Air Force, 6B was the Navy target. This was the most heavily defended area in the history of aerial warfare. And I'll explain to you how we come to that later on. And I flew 37 of my 100 over that. The only reason we didn't go up to the route Pack 6 any day was weather. And in Southeast Asia, there were a lot of weather days. Took me 6 months to finish 100 missions, so you can see about 1 out of every 3 missions was, or a little more, was to Hanoi. This shows the location of the 2 bases in Thailand. Tok Lee was here, and Korat was there. Those are the only 2 places we had 105. We had F-4s at U-Bahn, we had F-104s at U-1, and we had some rescue folks at NKP, we call it Naked Fanny, and they were up closer to the target area so they could come and get us. And Bob Lilac flew F-104s out of U-Dorn, and because the F-104 had fairly short legs, so they got a running start. We had 2 feeder bases. As I mentioned, we moved everything out of Europe and brought them over here to this side of the world. Yokota in Japan fed Tok Lee, and Kabina in Okinawa fed Korat. So that's where if we lost people, if we lost airplanes, get on the phone, it sends an airplane, sends some people. This is the flight line, or actually, this jumped ahead here. This is a view of the Hanoi area, and you might have heard about Thud Ridge. This mountain range, well, about 5,000 feet above the ground, and it was a sort of hiding space as you were running down toward targets in this area. They had Kep Airfield and Fukien Airfield, which were off the targeting list until August of 1967. How nice of us to allow them to operate and fly up and attack us, and we can't even bomb their bases. Here's Hanoi, here's the Paul Boomer Bridge and the Red River, and here's the Sante prison camp, which you might recall from history, where we sent a rescue team up there to get our POWs out, but unfortunately they had some polluted water, and the guards, they were worried about the guards couldn't drink the water, so they moved them about 2 weeks before the rescue party hit. And our intel didn't pick up on that, so they attacked and there was no one there. Here's what we had to live with. And you explain it to me, I can't. This shows you our political masters had us with a 10-mile prohibited zone and then another 30-mile restricted zone around Hanoi. Notice up here that Tai Nguyen, where they had a steel plant there and a railroad line. We often bombed Tai Nguyen, and that was when the Paris peace talks were going poorly, and they didn't want us, when they were going well, and they didn't want us inside here disturbing the Russians and the Vietnam leadership. The same thing in Haiphong. They were bringing in all these supplies, military supplies. How do you fight a war? Do you really want to win if you won't let people bomb near the capital or near their major port? It's nonsensical, but that was LBJ, and he was our boss, so that's what we did. Here's Tok Lee from above, 9,500-foot runway. We parked our airplanes here. The Thais were here. We actually had a U-2 and a hangar right here. And I didn't even know about it until one day I saw it taken off while I was lying by the pool on the day off. This is Skinny Me. This is what Gary Oldman looks like today. Daddy, I don't know, you don't cook, right? Gary says he keeps it off by drinking 8 beers a day. There must be a secret there. Oh, and I wanted to mention, see the name up at the top there? Your crew chief stencils your name on the side of the airplane. We will put the pilot on the left, the crew chief on the right, and you'll see the names here. We've got Colonel Tom Kirk on this side, my name's on the other side, and people say, well, that was that. Well, it wasn't. The naming of the airplanes changed as people came and went. If you got shot down, your name came off the airplane, new guy gets in, he gets an airplane with his name. So at most, a name was on an airplane for 6 months, unless it was a wing commander who was there for a year or two. This shows the flight line in 65 at Top Lee, and all our airplanes by 65 had been painted the olive drab colors you see here. And this is later, about 2 years later, we had revetments between, in case something had happened to one airplane, it wouldn't migrate over to its neighbors. The kids, the crew chiefs, God bless them, they could do an engine change in 8 hours, and they had to do a lot of them because of the amount of time you spent in afterburner, really stressing the engine in combat scenario. They changed the rules. They had to change the engines every 300 combat hours, and the normal mission was 3 to 4 to 4.5. So you can see that that was going on frequently. And so it went from 500 to 300, and they were doing this day in and day out. Hard work. Here's Colonel Jack Broden. He's a fairly well-known fellow. He was a Thunderbird lead before he made colonel, and he came as our vice wing commander. The wing commander, Colonel Bob Scott, was off TDY somewhere, so he's running the wing. And one of his kids comes in, Ted Tolman was his name. He said, "Boss, I think I screwed up." He was egressing from the target around Hanoi and was going fairly low, and he had a reputation for, if he could see a AAA site firing at us, he'd roll in and try to strafe it. And so he did that, but at the same time, that AAA site was right next to a Russian tanker tied up at a dock up by the Camouflage mines, which are northeast of Haiphong. So it wasn't inside that Haiphong circle. Well, Broden, being the type of leader he was going to take care of his guys. He found out the only evidence was the gun camera film. So they took it out and just exposed it. And so that was a hopefully done deal according to Broden and the guys. The Russian ambassador complained to LBJ. All hell broke loose. The final result was Broden and the 2 guys who were involved in that were court-martialed. Broden was court-martialed for destroying government property, the film. So that's how we took care of our folks. Here's Karat. Again, the 105s were here. The Thais used this part of the ramp. And both of these bases were Royal Thai Air Force bases. We were just tenants on their bases. And they were just the nicest people in the world. If you ever had a chance to get to Thailand, I recommend it entirely. The Thud was known for a very long takeoff roll. Fully loaded, we could eat up 8,000 feet of runway before nose wheel liftoff. Takeoff and landing speed was the same as a SR-71, about 230 miles an hour. Someone once said that if you built a runway all the way around the world, the Republic would build an airplane that would use it all up before it gets airplane. I went back to Karat for my second tour, and somebody ended the war on me. I got there in March, and things had happened, so we were just flying training missions. But I'll show you on this picture, so you can see the 2-seater, the G model. This gun, 38 special here, and bullets. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. If I got on the ground and there's 100 guys around doing like this, I think I'm just going to do that. Am I going to take on 100 guys with 138? But the most important thing we had was a radio. I'm losing my. Okay, we had a radio here, PRC 60, I think it was, Gary, and that was our way of communicating. So many guys were even hanging in the chute coming down to land, and we're already talking to the rescue people. We have a Sandy pilot out here with us, God bless you, because those guys were taking great risks trying to help us get out. We had a 250-foot line of cable here that we would use if we end up, which you often did, hung up in a tree. So, and we had a bunch of other little goodies here. A lot of water in your G-suit pockets, because one of the things people, when they bail out, was you're extremely thirsty as soon as you get on the ground. And the problem was, if you're in a high-threat environment and you're just pulling off from the bombing patch, you're going so fast, 500 knots, if you had to bail out because your airplane's falling apart, you 500 knots, you're flailing, things break, and there are an awful lot of folks that lost control of their arms and legs in the bailouts and landing. They couldn't get to the radio because they had no control of their arms. This was Karat, and you can see this was early '65, and the airplanes had not been painted olive red. There's one or two up here that had gone through the painting, and over here, but that was how they looked coming from the States. And here's later on, they had painted in OD by the time that photo was. I'm hitting this thing a little too hard, I think. Okay, great credit to the refueling guys. Over 6.5 years of combat operations at these two bases, we used single point refueling, run that hose into the hookup on the aircraft. Never one incident refueling an airplane in 6.5 years. Just great credit. What professionals. Here's some of the loads we carried. The rocket, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Here's the early OQs. When I was at Tonkley as a lieutenant, we started out in these. They were not air conditioned, but they cooled down to about 70 at night, so it wasn't too bad. The problem was they put the lieutenants here at the end by the door, because many times the guys would come in from the club slightly snockered and falling into the door, and it was hard to sleep because those guys, the ranking guys, kind of clustered to the middle where fewer people walked past them. We got new hooches at Karat later on. There were 4 compartments here. This is 2 men to a room here, 2 here, 2 and 2, and in the center was a little day room and the showers and the latrines. So those were first class accommodations compared to what we had come from. Now here's what we did day in, day out if you weren't flying combat. Somebody found a raft and filled it up with water, and so we had us a pool. You know, fighting pilots like to gamble. That's what, we started in Ellis, most of us in Las Vegas, and so they get good training. We had some good golfers and fine equipment, as you can see, and the course was well manicured. Then we had a few intellectuals, not many. Gary, were you a chess player? No, me neither. And we had a pool table, and of course, one nice thing about sleeping is you don't have to think about tomorrow. Here was the officers' club at Karat. A funny story that they had banana trees in a loop in front, and our squad commander got woken at night by the wing commander saying, "Your truck just ran over the Thai wing commander's banana trees. You have to find out who was driving the truck." Well, he was drunk. And so we called a squadron meeting, and this is in '73, and we said, "Oh, we've got to go back to war." And he says, "Guys, we ran over the banana trees, but I don't remember who was driving the truck. Would somebody raise their hand?" Nobody raised their hand. He had to go tell the wing commander, I couldn't get anybody to fess up. It was no real big deal, but it was kind of one of the humorous things that happened. Here's the O Club menu, and I'm telling you what, look at this stuff here. Tuna salad sandwich, 35 cents. Fried chicken, $1.25. Shredded fresh shrimp, $1. Club, coleslaw, 15 cents. French fries, 15 cents. It was a good deal. And we were getting paid $2 a day extra combat pay, tax-free. $60 a month combat pay, so we could afford this easily. Here's one of 6 squadrons, the 13th. We've got a 13th guy here somewhere. And Mac Angel is a friend of mine, and Mac's picture's right there. And he was a Thunderbird. But what we do is take these pictures about every 3-4 months because the faces were always changing. And so somewhere in everybody's back room is a picture of his squadron. But I only wanted to show you one of these. The camaraderie established among the guys, you cannot be closer to another human being than to someone you've flown combat with. And that's most I can say about that. We started party suits, it started at Karat, and now you can see as you get older, you have room for more patches. Okay? Roscoe, he was brought from Karat in a C-130 by one of the pilots coming in from Karat, from Kadima to Karat. Sweet dog. I'd sit there in the O Club having lunch, and he'd just come and sit next to you and just look up. And so you had to give him stretch. So he was everybody's dog because his pilot had got shot down. He passed away in Karat. They created a nice memorial for him. And here's J.J. Smith. I call him the world's greatest crew chief. He had a 27-year career in the Air Force. He retired as a tech sergeant. And all those 27 years, he was an F-105 crew chief. And in combat, the air engines get stressed as much as they are. JJ did more than was required. All he was required to do when the airplane shut down, check the oil level. He drained the oil out of the motor, cap it, refill it with fresh oil. And he was the only one I know who was doing that. But that's why I call him the world's greatest crew chief. We had 5 different assignments together. Nellis checkout, top leg, Nellis again, Karat, and then at George. And I was able to give him a 105 for that. I was very, that JJ just passed to an answer. Here's our loads. The rocket pods were the least favored because you had to get down low to fire them, and that wasn't real intelligent in this environment. The normal load that we carried almost every day was 750-pound bombs, and we did have some 2,000-pound bombs that we carried occasionally. And here's a 750 load, and this guy's on his 100th mission, and somebody had said something about to Uncle Ho. Of course, they'd never see it once it went off. But this is, and we were talking about pre-flights. You just go look at the bomb and walk around the airplane. Now, I have to tell you this. There were no ladies on the flight line. We had, all-man Air Force at the time in the combat area. And so our standard routine, since you're going to be in the airplane 3.5, 4 hours, just go pee at the back end of the airplane as you walk around it. I don't know what they do. They must have porta potties all around now because there's ladies everywhere. Here's the biggest bomb we carried, the 3,000-pounder. And when that thing went off, a lot of folks on the ground got deaf. But it did the work for things like the Paul Romer Bridge I'll show you a picture of. If it was a strong, heavy structure, this was the only thing that would take it down. And here's the 3,000-pounder on the loader. Now, you can notice this tire here. 3,000 pounds is the maximum allowed weight on this loader, and you can see why. They had to be very careful with those things moving around. Here's the Wild Weasel orders. The Weasel is, this picture doesn't show the 2-seat, but you'll see it in the later slide. The Weasel is 3 feet longer to make room for the back cockpit. And we carried the Shrike, which is on the left, had about a 15-mile range, and a Standard Arm, which was about over 50-mile range. The problem was the Standard Arm, which was a much more effective weapon because it could actually lock on to a sight and you could fire off bore sight toward the target, whereas the Shrike, you just had to loft right at the target and pick it off, and it just fell away and picked up something and there it went. But the problem was this thing, the Standard Arm was 1,400 pounds. So you really had to get rid of it fairly early inbound because the Weasels were first in and last out. And that's why we could suffer such great losses because they spent so much more time in the target area doing their job. But that blivet, that 1,700 pound or 1,400 pound blivet had to be gotten rid of fairly soon in the mission, or you're a little bit messed up. The Gatling gun, after you fired the 20-millimeter rounds, they stayed in a bin so that we didn't change the CG of the airplane with all that weight if we were spilling them out. And so they weren't ingested into the airplane. So this is the guys reloading the gun. Here's your best friend. Unfortunately, it wasn't a 0-0 seat, meaning you couldn't just sit here and fire yourself out with no speed. You had to have 180 knots to be able to safely eject in the 105. And there were cases on landing when you're not 180 and the airplane's going off the runway or something, but you're too slow to bail out. So it did create a little bit of a problem. Here's the centerline fuel tank. When this airplane came in, we talked to the crew chiefs at Carswell to try to figure out how to open those bomb bay doors, because the bomb bay doors in this airplane kind of go up on the sides, so they're not in the way. And here you can see the 390 gallon fuel tank that's in there. It's still in there now. We can't open it to take a look at it. I used this picture because the kid in the middle there reminds me of a young man. He was a major in my squadron. We both had about the same number of missions. And one day he came up to me and he said, "Boy, if something happens to me, will you mail this for me?" Now I didn't even look at to whom. I just put it in a drawer by my bed. Within a week he was blown up, just gone. He was KIA. I put it in the mail. But that look on this guy's face reminds me of that story, and so I wanted to show it to you. When you came out of your squadron, you had your parachute, your ditty bag with your helmet, and off you go. You can see on the right-hand side here, the guys walking with the chutes. This airplane is different from the F-4. I don't know, 104, did you have the chute already in the seat, Bob? No? So they 104 said did the same thing, right? Walk out with your chute and strap on. Cart start, lots of fun, made it easy on the maintenance people because we used like a big coffee can cart, and it would spool up the motor and off you could go. Didn't have to drag APU start carts around the ramp depending on what airplane was going to be needed that day. We went out to the Army area, and you can see everybody lined up here on the bottom left side. And I don't care what your religion was or whether you had none, it was always very nice to see that chaplain out there giving you a thumbs up. The last thing you said over the radio before you took the active was canopy pins lanyard ramp. Canopy down and locked, pins all out of the seat, lanyard, you got your lanyard hooked up so that you could bail out, your parachute would get pulled. And ram, I'll show you a little bit of picture inside, you had to have the air conditioner turned off because that took air off the engine. And one thing you didn't want to do was take anything off that engine when you're talking about 8,000 foot takeoff roll. We'll just sit in there and sweat if it's going to mean 500 more feet of rolling down the runway. Here's 4 airplanes. You can barely see the 4th tail. We had a 650 gallon centerline tank when we carried these 2 3,000 pound bombs. This is a non-combat photo. And you can put it in just so you can see what we call the ejector position of the afterburner cans. That allowed you to get the most power from the engine. We had a water injection system, a 30-gallon water tank in the back that gave you a little extra oomph during takeoff. And there were times on high temperature days where you could not take off if you did not get water injection. You light the burner, you release the brakes, and then you toggle for water and you feel it. And if you didn't feel it, you're supposed to abort because you might not get airborne before the end of the runway. Here's the weasel. Now you can see there that 3-foot wedge they had to put in the airplane. And that added 9 knots to final too. So the weasels were easily 200 knots getting airborne and 210 knots on final. And there you can see the strike and the standard arm on that airplane. This was the office. Very interesting. We were the only airplane I know of. I don't know what the new ones look like, but we had these vertical tapes. You had airspeed here and altitude over here, and you could use these little toggle switches to set. And so you normally set airspeed, what do I care? 550, which is the release point. I'm going to plan a 45-degree dive bomb pass, release at 6,000 feet above the ground, doing 550 knots. So you set that little window there with 550, and you come over here and you put 6,000 feet, and then as those numbers move, that tape moves together, you hopefully have a 45-degree descent picture here, and those lines together, and that you have done your job perfectly. It was hard to get perfect, but that's what you were trying to do. Down here on the bottom left is the probe handle. To open the probe, you turn and pull this little handle, which you can see the top half of. To just open the receptacle, you just pull it straight out. Here were the bomb switches. Here, it took about 6 switches to set yourself up, and then these little lights would come on. If you had inboard, outboard station weaponry, you'd see the lights come on. And then you'd say, green them up as you're inbound, and you pull this switch up, and everything would green up. Here's instruments. I pulled off a target one time. I was just a newbie. And this old crusty major says, okay, boys, set the benzene pull at 6. Benzene pull? Nobody said anything about benzene pull. What's that? So I started looking around, and I found out that just flying in formation with him on the way out, that the fuel flow was at 6. I said, well, that's a good thing to call a benzene pull. The fuel gauge and fuel flow indicator. Some of the old guys taught us well. The left side, I'll just show you here, this is the air conditioning handle that you pull full aft to make sure you weren't stealing air from the motor for the takeoff. And here's the drag chute handle right there, and there's the throttle. You could go into AB by kicking it outboard, and you could ramp it back if you needed less than full AB. Over on the right-hand side, we've had the Doppler, which was very critical to our being able to find things on the ground or fly to places that were not necessarily a TACAM station, which was the nav aids that we used in the military. Well, we started out settling in for a 700-mile trip. It's like going from here to Denver, from Thailand to Hanoi. And this was just a long time to fly up there. And we'd cycle through, and the last guy off the tanker before you dropped off in inbound was number 4, because he's got to do more of this to stay in position than lead or 2 or 3. So 4 was the last guy off. The boom receptacle I was talking to you about, there's the little receptacle which is open. This was a piece of cake. You just fly up under the tanker, and the boomer sits there and he sees you, and now you just fly in formation with him. And he flies his little thing using these wings. He flies that down there and he plunks you, so you feel this bonk and you're connected. Here's what it looked like from the cockpit. Some fool actually, well, I had a camera too, but I lost all my photos. But here's one of the guys, same shot. But of course, whenever you refuel, you put your mask on because you could get some spill and splash. Here's the nasty little thing, the probe. We didn't get that many tankers in Vietnam that needed the probe, but it was there. It was a very hard thing. It's probably the hardest thing to do in the Air Force. Here's Bob Lilac. Bob, would you stand up? Bobby's a docent here, and Bobby flew the F-104 out of New York, and there he is, hooked up. And all they had was a probe and drove. And the 2 thuds, there's another 104, and here's a thud here. But you see what we had to do? You had to fly up in formation with this little guy. It was like a big badminton ball, if you can imagine. And as you get next to it, the wind stream off your fuselage would make it fly away from you. So how do we do this? You just kind of keep trying to catch it in the middle. And then after you had it, you had to modulate the throttle to keep a little bend in it. We had a case where a guy actually broke it off and came and landed with this much of the thing just hanging there. And some guys couldn't check out for combat because they couldn't do the probe and drove. It was the hardest thing you had to do in 105. Here's how we got there. We had refueling tracks up this way to Hanoi. We used most of those. That's the way we most frequently got in. There was always a way to find the tanker. And of course they were fragged for us. And NKP had this kind of a route. And we also went this, what we call the water route inbound, if we were going to bomb up on the east side of Hanoi, around the Kep airfield, or back beyond the bridge or something like that. So 2 ways in. We call the water route, and the most beautiful scenery in the world. If you ever had a chance to see these little islands out here, they're gorgeous. They rise about 5,000 feet, sheer karst, beautiful coastlines. I used to look down and say, I want to go around that beach sometime. But it's a gorgeous thing. Thuds over Route Pack 6. We say very proudly that it was the most heavily defended area in the history of aerial warfare. Here's an artist's depiction. This is Keith Ferris drawing. You can see that this guy and the others have dropped their 3,000 pounders. Here's a little QRC plot we use. Later on, we got these things in, and they would help jam the radars from the sands. But you can see some of the AAA that we might have been going through. And there's the Domer Bridge. And it took the 3,000 pounders to get it. They didn't let us bomb the Domer Bridge until August of '67. Now, if you ask the question, well, how can you say it's the most heavily defended area? Well, here's an expert, Robin Olds, commander of the 8th TAC Fighter Wing. He got 13 victories in Europe, 4 in Vietnam. So he's a quadruple ace. And these are his words from his book. There were more enemy air defenses within 60 miles of Hanoi than within the entire European theater of operations. So that's a fact, Jack. Here's the things that they had against us. You know, back in World War II, there were no SAMs, but these guys were nasty. The good news is they were big enough where you could normally see them coming up if it was anywhere near a clear day. And here's the radar that supported. They got azimuth and elevation off these 2. And this little board right here would guide the missile. It had a receiver in the tail end, and the radar here would guide that missile. They had big guns, 57 millimeters, 70 rounds per minute they could get out of this guy. Here's the ammunition. 37 is what they had most of, 60 rounds a minute. That's 1 a second they could fire. 85 millimeter, 10 rounds per minute. So once every 6 seconds, I could get one of these 85 millimeter shells. And when they were there, you knew they were there. The sky, filled up a quarter mile up with blackness. So those are the things that made it the most heavily defended. Here's Sam's largest depiction of it, but you can see this little tail end is the booster. And it stayed attached to the missile until they were above 3,000, or they had traveled 3,000 feet. So since these guys are going vertically, you can see that this picture is a depiction of these airplanes airborne inbound below 3,000 feet. They had 63 MiG-17s, mostly out of Fukin, some in back cap, a subsonic airplane. And then there's a MiG-21 standing right over the little bastard. And they were supersonic. And there were 14 of them in service in '67. We were able to get 27 and a half. Somebody that gave each a half, but 27 and a half MiG kills in Vietnam by 105s. We lost 22 MiGs, so we're on the plus side there. Here's a guy doing a sight check. You can see the reticle here. He got behind lead and turned on the reticle and went to air, and he saw that if he pulled up, the reticle would stay on his target, and he knew things were working then. Here's actual gun camera film from the 105. You can see the MiG-17 there, and the pilot is bailing out. And he was one of those 27 and a half that we got. Or actually 28, because they split one. I had 4 opportunities to get MiGs. I was on my leader, Major Hank Higgins. He and I must have flown 50 missions together. And he always wanted to get a MiG. Some of these guys just had to do this. So I'm on his wing and we're maneuvering around. And he wouldn't leave the target area and go to the tanker. He'd kind of do this. And they're looking for MiG. Well, one day I found one for him. It says, Maverick Lee, down 10 o'clock lows of 17. So we went after him. My gun camera film showed up in the cover of Aviation Week or Air and Space or something like that. And later that year, after we finished 100 missions, I've never been able to find a magazine. I saw it in base operations on the cross country. I said, that's my film. But Hank got that credit. He was a very happy man at that time. I had 2 other, we were, the day after Leo got shot down, how am I doing for time? I gotta get hustling here. I'll go fast. Anyway, I had 4 shots at MiGs, didn't get one because I was not good enough, I guess. All right. Here's Barry Waller, Dave Waller. He was in pilot training class at Del Rio, 1 class ahead of me, but he didn't go in an entire lieutenant training class to LSD, and then they went to Yokota instead of directly to Thailand. So he's over there with us at Taku. He has 47 missions under his belt in the squadron in Yokota. Says, come back here, TDY's over. He and 4 other guys. Well, he says, I'm going to get 100. And so he called his friend, Lieutenant Colonel Fritz Trays, who's the squadron commander, and says, can I come over there and finish my 100? And Trays says, sure, I'll take care of the paperwork. He didn't. So Barry goes over there, finishes his 100. One of his later missions, he gets 2 MiGs. So he's in all the newspapers, and everybody knows about Lieutenant Dave Waller. He got a call from the squadron back at Dakota, said, we thought you were AWOL. Trey's never followed up on the paperwork. But he's a good guy. I see him talk to Barry frequently. Nice guy. Here's the Paul Domer Bridge. Paul Domer was a French president at one time. And then before and after on that, here's Kep when they finally let us go bomb the airfields. Interestingly enough, as soon as we started bombing the airfields, they took the MiGs, moved them up to China. So they weren't there to bother us as much because it wasn't just there's the bomb, there's the war zone. The war zone was 80 miles away. So that was nice of them to let us bomb the airfields when these guys were flying in to get us. Here's some pictures of the Ho Chi Minh Trail and things that, if you got down real close, these come from Google. If you Google Ho Chi Minh Trail, you can see this kind of stuff. And so it's very interesting to get a close look in today. These are some bomb photos the guys would take looking down with a Nikon camera looking down. You can see road cut there, bridge cut. In some of these you'll see that they get very inventive, driving tractors around to make new roads. I want to say this. You can see where the bomb craters are here. There's no bomb craters in that little town. I'm telling you, and Gary will back me up, We did not bomb women and children in churches. And yet that's what the kids in San Francisco wanted us to believe, that we were bombing women and children. That, God damn it, did not happen. We had targets, and that's what we did. So the same thing here. Cities sitting there, no bomb craters. Here's the most iconic thing that I can remember. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, we heard about it. You can see that it's a way that they got around all the U.S. Army troops in Vietnam to fight them and to supply them. They come around here through Laos and Cambodia. And of course, whenever we tried to go out into Laos and Cambodia and stop them, move the equipment, we were escalating the war, expanding the war. Well, the North Vietnamese had already done that. Don't you go where the bad guys are, or do you let them get to your rear and then have to fight them from behind? This was my 96 mission, and I'm getting close here. I found this on Google, a map, and some people actually go there and take these local pictures. I'll show you later. On my 96, I was a flight lead, a major on his first flight on my wing. I roll in, pull off, look back, bombs, yeah, okay, I hit it. He flies up through the cloud. There's a new cloud, 37 millimeter layer. It was like a new full cloud right there that they had created for him because they were ready for us, but they were a little after I pulled up. This airplane came up, he was on fire. So I said, you can't turn left and go to the coast, you'll never make it 40, 50 miles. So I said, turn west, and he turned west. And I watched, and the fire just kept moving further and further forward on the airplane. Finally, I had to tell him to bail out. He did, 500 knots. Beat up completely, never came on the radio. So I went over to the guard and told him where he was. He was hanging in the tree. And I'm starting to get close on gas, and I asked him how long for the rescue team here. About half an hour. So I ran to a tanker, filled up, came back. I got back on the frequency with the rescue guys and said, where is the helicopter? Well, they're taking fire down near Vin, on the other side of the ridge line, between here and the ocean, and they're turning back. I said, no. I'm not leaving this guy hanging in a tree, unconscious. So I said, what frequency are they on? I went over their frequency, got them to give me a hold down, which meant I could go to DF on one of the buttons, and my bearing pointer would point to right where they were. So I flew out over this flatlands in North Vietnam, which was a no-no. Got down to 1,000 feet, which was really a no-no. Slowed to 250 knots, as you gotta be shitting me, with half flaps. And I did S-turns in front of the helicopter, because the fastest he could go was 180. And I led him back to him, lit the burner, and said, here he is. They got up to him, dropped a tree penetrator. They said, he's not hooking up. I said, can you send somebody down to get him? And they did, hooked the guy up, brought him up, got him to the boat. He survived. He's in Alabama now. He's still alive. He never flew again. The kids on that helicopter were on their last mission. They were getting ready to go home. And so I can understand that, look, we're getting on fire here. We better go home. Well, we just couldn't let that happen. This is a photo someone took on a trip of that little water crossing. A nice little fishing area. You can see a little remnants of the bridge. It wasn't a bridge. It was underwater. You can see just below the surface they have these big cement things laying there, and the trucks at night would use that as their bridge. And this is probably a high water mark. Ski brakes. So we had 4 pedals. All 4 would expand if your gear were up. If the gear were down, the top one wouldn't, because you'd be set up for the drag chute. It'd get in the way of the drag chute. The lower one wouldn't extend when the gear were down, because it might drag at landing. Hank and I must have done 50 formation landings. I got so good at these things. Egos. I got so good. I'd look at his gear, and when he was about this far off the runway, I'd pop the chute, because I'm that far off the runway. And then as we went past Mobile, I'd wave at him. Fool. But it was fun. You got to make fun outside. Touchdown 200 knots. The airplane was long gear, you can see. We couldn't do touch and goes. Every time if you look at how many times you flew the airplane, that's how many landings you had in. You hoped. You hoped. Now, to have a good chute, if you didn't have a good chute, there was a hook on the tail end of the airplane, and it was better probably to take that barrier at the far end than to get hot brakes, because that put more work on your crew chiefs. So better to take a barrier. Battle damage. Talking about the B-17, you can see some of the evidences. Here's a missing canopy. Here's a hole inside the airplane. Here's the whole section of the wing missing, and radome with some bullet holes in it. Very good design in that there's no fuel in the wing between, other than just where it goes from here, from the tank into the main fuel tanks. There's another slide here. Wait, that's it. A little bit bigger holes. This was probably 85 millimeter here, but it made it home. Here's standing in the hole in his wing, and there was actually parts of a missile, a surface air missile, embedded in the aft section of this airplane, which came back and landed. And here's one that the landing gear collapsed on the landing, and he was underneath 180 knots, and so there's no jumping out, but you can see in the picture here, the seat's still there, so he rode this puppy through. Here's one of the 115 guys that were picked up by the helicopters with the great help from the Sandys to keep the bad guys away, and he had that bad habit of smoking. There was actually a story of a Thud pilot that stopped smoking because he thought it'd be better for his health. Here's how we kept records. See the little hat, little bush hats? This guy's got little tick marks on his hat. You wanted to make sure that your number matched the number on the board of the squadron. And if you can't quite see it from here, but here's my name, and there's Leo Thorson's right below. He was in the Weasel flight, so we were right there together. He had 54 counters, and I had 24. And over here you can see the R&R schedule in the little boxes. Finally over. Here you're the only one in the room, Bob. When it's finally over, you say, my God, now I can think about something other than just what am I going to do tomorrow? Because in that period of time when you're losing half your guys, it's an emotion you just don't want to experience. They had a red carpet for us, and then I'm going to tell you a little quick story about my 100. Bob Lodge is on the left, Bob Scott, the wing commander's in the middle, and that's me on the right. We had practiced this the day before. I was lead on the 100 mission on the scheduling board, but we practiced with me on the wing, so we switched. But off the target, I pulled up, and Bob says, hey, lead, you got one hung. I had 6 750s, you've seen the pictures. One of them, for some reason, didn't come off. I never had that happen. And Bob immediately comes back. He's almost a Rhodes Scholar athlete, a photographic memory system. 240 knots max, 1G, no flats. Well, if Bob Lodge says it, it's true. So I did all that and bonk, toggled that whole rack on. We switched leads, came back, we did 5 passes. 100 knots, or 100 feet, 550 knots just to wake up the Indians. And then it came around, another pass very slow with the probes out. Now you can imagine what the probes out mean to people when you give them a probe. And then we came around a third time, 550 low, and pull up vertical, and right at vertical I rolled and pulled, and he did a nose-on pass on either side of the runway. I'm on the right, and he's on the right, so we did a nose-on pass. Come back around, and the last picture, well, I guess I advanced here. This last picture here, this picture, shows me in the pull-up and Bob in a roll. What we did is he pulled up and did a 360 and continued, and then 4 seconds later I pulled up and did 360. And we came in and landed, shook the hands of the wing commander, and I understand he changed the rules the next day. You can't do that in anything. He was almost like this. So anyway, this is lieutenants, what the heck. We had different ways of celebrating 100 missions, but they all involved a lot of drinking and a lot of smiling and a lot of handshakes. I want to mention 3 of the greatest warriors we had. Anybody strapped down on 105 was a warrior, but these guys are special. Carl Richter on the left flew 100 missions as a lieutenant at Korat and says, sir, I'm going to stay for another 100. And he did. And he actually got shot down on the books on this 198, but the guys there said he was running on 203. He was just hoping to get another name. Down in the middle, Tom Cody had over 200 missions and over 1,000 hours of 105 combat time. And the guy on the right is the 3rd member of this. These are our heroes. Lucky Ekman, over 200 missions and 1,000 hours of combat time. Those are the guys that we look up to because of their courage. R&R's in Bangkok, what a magnificent place. This place has been knocked down, the Princess Hotel, but that's where the Pan Am stewardesses went, so that's where the fire department went. Here was a pool in the back, here's riding around in a clone, that's me with a big elephant I wish I'd bought. Here's the guys laying by the pool, and I couldn't buy that elephant, but I got to touch him. He was a sweet thing. We had Thunderbirds for a very short time. This number 2 guy, he passed away in a Thunderbird demonstration. I'll tell you about that in just a second. The tail section on the Thunderbirds, the ones that might be in chase or in the slot position behind the leader, picking up all this heat, they had to remanufacture those tails out of titanium so they could stand the heat. But unfortunately, at Hill Air Force, or at Hamilton Air Force Base, on just the 6th F-105 demonstration, number 2 in the pop-up for landing, the airplane just broke in half, and he died. And so that was the last F-105 airship. Hanoi B-52 rate, I'm getting real close. We finally, Nixon said to the leaders of the Air Force, I want this thing over. It has just been going on forever. So this was Jim Terry, a friend of mine. You may remember Jim. He gave me this map because he's using it in some presentation he's doing. Here were the targets around Hanoi, the triangles. By this date, 27, 28 December, we've been bombing here and Haiphong and mining the harbor for 17 days. And you know what? They were out of missiles because it stopped their supply train for missiles. It took Nixon to make that, allow us to do this, to stop them at their supply line. It's like, how do you stop UPS? Well, you stop the airplanes, for one thing. But, just kind of, we can't stop, we can't go hurt them where they really will feel it. But after we did this, 18 days in Hanoi, laid up cove, went like this to Kissinger, and they signed the peace accord. So for a year and a half, we could honestly say the military had won the war in Vietnam. It is a fact. Look it up. That the Paris Peace Accords. They were going to stay on their side of the DMZ, and the South would stay on theirs. We were simply supposed to resupply the South. Honestly, the Democrats controlled Congress, and they didn't like the fact that Nixon was getting this credit. So they said, no, we're not supplying any more dollar to South Vietnam. Well, the North read the newspaper, and so they reattacked. And it's just like any other peace treaty. It only lasts as long as both sides are strong to hold them, as we did in Korea. But we weren't willing to do a Korea trip here. So that led to this. Right here is Jim Shiva, and right there is Jerry Driscoll. You may have heard stories about Jerry Driscoll. This was one of the C-141s that were flying back from Hanoi, Jiaolong Airport, to Clark, where these guys spent about 3 weeks getting reaccustomed to the world and putting fat on their bones. But this was the second flight out. They sent them out in groups of 3 a month apart because mainly we had to have this big infrastructure set up at Clark to take care of them and then send them away back home. And so this was the second group, and it was all based on the date you were shot down, which group you went out with. And this was the last flight of thuds at Hill. And our 2 Medal of Honor owners and Tom Cody were leading this flight. And you can see the date here, 25 February 84. That was the last official Air Force flight. I'm sorry I took so long. Any questions?
Is there anybody that had a question? I see one over here. Folks, I do this quite a bit during the year. We have a lot of people that speak here, historians that are very good. I don't want to diminish their presentations or the ones that have come before. But we've sat here and listened to someone that was actually here. How about a hand? Okay, Gordy, now it's a pop quiz. We had a question or two yet?
Yes, sir. My name is Sheriff Ross. I was with the 1st Marines, 68, 69.
I'll say shout out to that.
Outside of Da Nang, I was with the artillery protection base. Okay. So anyway, what I'm getting at is, at the Air Force at Da Nang, I saw what I thought was F-105s taking off. Were they F4s? Because this
No,
one,
once in a while, when those water routes, guys would have problems, they had maybe taken battle damage or something, we would have to put into the bank. And the lander get fixed, and then they'd fly home.
I want to thank the F-105 pilots, F-405 pilots. We got a lot of far from the surrounding mountains. I was in the Central Highlands, and those planes would come in and do airstrikes and sometimes swarm around like, they looked like bees swarming around the target.
Well, we always felt bad because we'd go home after a mission, no matter what it was, and we'd have a steak and a beer and lay by the pool, and you guys were in the mud, and God bless you.
Well, you kept us alive to eat sea rations, and they were good enough.
Thanks, Dale.
Good point. How many people here have served in Vietnam? Thank you. Thank you. Question back there.
I'm Al Dempsey. I was in the 506 Tactical Fighter Wing in the mid-50s, who had 54s and F-100s. Quick question about your 8,500 foot takeoff roll. Did you monitor runway markers to have certain airspeeds to make sure you were going to get off?
Absolutely. The first thing you always had to have almost every day was that water injection to feel the kick. And we had a refusal speed that you had to be at a certain length down the runway. I can't recall, something like 120 knots at the 5,000 foot remaining mark or something, just like commercial airliners do. But if you didn't have refusal speed, you had to immediately come idle, drag shoot, and get on the brakes hard, because that was the point, beyond refusal speed, where you couldn't safely refuse to take off.
Did you ever do that?
No, sir. My airplanes with J.J. Smith, they were smooth as silk. They never had an engine problem.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take one more question. Then we do have a flight exhibition today. We've got a T-28. We're going to open up the hangar doors there, go out on the ramp and see it fly. T-28s did participate in Vietnam, although I don't think nearly as fast as the F-105, Gordy.
Yeah, but by the way, did we get the coin back?
I do have it.
You do?
I just wanted to ask any of you, I golfed with a fellow named Dick Diller, and he wrote a book about his 105 experiences in Vietnam, and he was a Delta pilot for many years. Do you recognize that?
No,
name?
sir, I don't. The only, again, we were in a little funnel.
Right.
I was at Tockley, these guys were at Carrot, I was there 6 months and then went back for another 6 months later on in Weasel. But those are the guys you knew. We go to reunions, river rat reunions, but I see a face and it's a face I recall from somewhere, but it's not like the guy you were in the squadron with. I'm sorry, I don't know.
All right, how about a hand once again, folks? Thank you so much.